Let's talk about your car, that gleaming machine sitting in your driveway, or perhaps the one you're dreaming of owning someday. Whether it's a gas guzzler, roaring down the highway with a powerful engine, or a sleek EV, silently gliding through city streets, it relies on obscure metals, mostly from China. Metals with names you've likely never encountered yet are absolutely essential to modern automotive manufacturing. In spring 2025, China decided to remind the world of this dependence, flexing its industrial muscle on the global stage, by abruptly restricting exports of key rare earth elements, a decision that sent shockwaves through the automotive industry and beyond. The global auto industry, built on just-in-time logistics, a system designed for maximum efficiency and minimal inventory, screeched to a halt. The consequences were immediate and far-reaching. Ford's Chicago plant went dark, a symbol of the disruption rippling across the manufacturing landscape, not for lack of steel or rubber or glass, but for a few grams of metal you've never heard of. Metals vital for everything from catalytic converters to electric motors. Across Europe, factories furloughed workers, sending them home with uncertainty hanging in the air. The intricate dance of global manufacturing, a carefully choreographed ballet of supply and demand, tripped over a missing ingredient the size of a sugar packet. For decades, automakers obsessed over efficiency, streamlining their processes and minimizing costs at every turn, building a fragile house of cards where a single missing piece could bring the whole structure crashing down. China held the bottom row and just slid one out, demonstrating its control over a critical choke point in the global economy. This wasn't a hypothetical risk, a theoretical scenario discussed in boardrooms and think tanks. It was factory gates chained shut, a stark and undeniable reality. Thousands of workers sent home, their livelihoods disrupted by forces beyond their control. Beijing's message came through the silence of idle machinery, a powerful and unambiguous signal to the world. The road to the future, gasoline or electric, runs through China, at least for now, and if they want, they can set up a roadblock at any time, disrupting supply chains and impacting economies across the globe, leaving the rest of the world stuck in traffic, struggling to find alternative routes and secure vital resources. The world learned, brutally, how dependent it had become on a single nation for critical components. The assembly lines went silent, a chilling reminder of the interconnectedness and vulnerabilities of the modern global economy. And the message was deafening. A call to action urging nations to diversify their supply chains and secure their own access to essential resources. Rare earth elements sounds like something you'd find in a fantasy novel, maybe even wizard loot, conjuring images of mystical artifacts and hidden treasures. But the truth is far more mundane, grounded in the reality of industrial processes, and yet, paradoxically, more vital to our modern way of life than any magic wand. Despite their name, they're not actually rare in terms of abundance. Cerium, for instance, is more common than copper, a metal we use extensively in wiring and plumbing. The real nightmare, the challenge that makes them so strategically important, is processing them, separating them, and refining them into usable forms. We're talking about 17 elements, a family of chemically similar metals that are almost always found together in the Earth's crust, making the separation process incredibly complex. These elements, often overlooked and misunderstood, are the secret sauce, the essential ingredient, in a vast array of modern technologies. They're in your phone, enabling the vibrant display and the powerful speakers, laptop, powering the hard drive and ensuring efficient performance, fiber optics, the backbone of the internet, allowing for high-speed data transmission, and especially your car, playing a critical role in everything from safety systems to entertainment. Rare earths are essential to make the incredibly strong magnets in EV motors, providing the power and torque needed for acceleration sensors, which monitor everything from tire pressure to engine performance, catalytic converters, reducing harmful emissions and cleaning the air we breathe, and advanced electronics, controlling everything from navigation to safety features. A typical car, even a gasoline-powered one, has about 4 pounds of these materials embedded within its various systems. Without them, you simply cannot build a modern vehicle with all the features and capabilities we've come to expect. Their cost per car is relatively tiny compared to other components, a small fraction of the overall manufacturing expense. But their absence creates a bottleneck, halting the entire industry and disrupting the global supply chain. Electric vehicles, with their reliance on powerful electric motors and advanced battery technology, need even more rare earths than traditional gas cars, especially for their high-performance motors, which require strong magnets to deliver the necessary power and efficiency. The entire green transition, the shift towards renewable energy and sustainable technologies, is completely dependent on these weirdly named metals. The industry, in its relentless pursuit of innovation, largely ignored this vulnerability for years, focusing on cost reduction and maximizing profits, chasing performance and efficiency, without fully considering the geopolitical risks associated with relying on a limited number of suppliers. In 2025 they found out, in a stark and painful way, who really controlled the magic beans, who held the keys to the kingdom of modern technology. The world's clean future, the promise of a sustainable and environmentally friendly tomorrow, is built on a surprisingly fragile foundation. And that foundation, weakened by years of neglect and underinvestment, just cracked under the immense weight of global demand. How did China end up holding the keys not just to a single industry but to the entire global auto industry? It's a question that demands a closer look, as the implications are far-reaching and affect economies worldwide. It boils down to three core elements: foresight, a well-defined strategy, and perhaps most critically the West dropping the ball at multiple stages. A combination of factors allowed China to seize this advantage. Until the 1990s, the US actually led the world in rare earth production, a critical component for many technologies. Then, a confluence of environmental concerns, coupled with the lure of cheaper labor overseas, gradually shifted the industry's center of gravity towards China. This wasn't an accident, it was a calculated move. China invested heavily in the sector, recognizing its strategic importance for future industries. They dedicated resources to mastering the often dirty and complex process of refining rare earths, a crucial step in the supply chain. And they didn't stop there. They focused on building a vertically integrated supply chain, controlling every stage from mining to manufacturing. The Chinese government heavily subsidized domestic producers, allowing them to undercut international competitors on price, and crucially, they absorbed environmental costs that Western nations were increasingly unwilling to bear. By the 2010s, China had achieved a near monopoly, controlling over 90% of the world's processed rare earths. This wasn't just market dominance, it was a carefully engineered monopoly by design, giving them immense leverage. They demonstrated this power in 2010 in a move that sent shockwaves through the global economy. They cut off rare earth exports to Japan following a diplomatic spat, a clear signal of their control. The immediate result was a dramatic spike in prices, highlighting the world's dependence on Chinese supply. The world panicked, scrambling to find alternative sources and reassess their reliance on a single supplier. But ultimately, the allure of cheap Chinese rare earths proved too strong, and trade resumed. Alarm bells rang loudly, warning of the dangers of this dependence, but the snooze button was too tempting, and the warnings were largely ignored in favor of short-term economic gains. China's growing dominance wasn't some hidden secret. The evidence was readily available in countless reports and market analyses. It was a slow-motion takeover, unfolding over decades, with each step clearly visible. The West watched, often with a sense of complacency, and ultimately did far too little to counter China's strategic moves. Now the consequences of this inaction are becoming impossible to ignore, as supply chain vulnerabilities threaten industries worldwide. By 2025, trade skirmishes escalated. On April 4th, China announced sweeping export restrictions on critical rare earths. The market reaction was instant. Prices for elements like dysprosium and terbium surged 40% in 3 weeks. Automakers' lean supply chains emptied out, orders were canceled, production seized up. Ford halted Explorer production in Chicago, a symbolic blow. Similar chaos hit Germany, France, and Japan. The pursuit of efficiency had created a massive vulnerability. After weeks of economic carnage, China offered temporary export licenses, just enough to restart assembly lines, but not enough to solve the problem. The message: we control the tap, and we can turn it off whenever we want. The crisis was paused, not resolved. The world was left on a short leash. The fragility of globalization was exposed for all to see. The lesson: dependency is dangerous, and China holds the switch. The 2025 shutdown was a wake-up call. Western industry and governments scrambled. U.S. companies began stockpiling rare earths, building strategic reserves. The government poured hundreds of millions into reviving domestic mining and processing, funding projects like Mountain Pass and new plants in Texas. The goal: break China's stranglehold on processing, but building new mines and plants takes years, sometimes decades. Even if the West succeeds, China can crash the market by flooding it with cheap supply, bankrupting competitors. Only a handful of non-Chinese projects are economically viable at current prices. It's a rigged game, and China can change the rules at any time. The world is playing catch-up, and the clock is ticking. The world's escape plan is multi-pronged. First, find rare earths elsewhere. Australia, Vietnam, and even Saudi Arabia are ramping up mining and processing, but mining is slow and expensive. Second, invent new magnets. Companies like Niron Magnetics are developing iron-nitrogen magnets, no rare earths required. Niron plans to open its first plant in Minnesota by 2027, aiming to supply millions of EVs. If they succeed, it could upend the entire industry, making rare earths obsolete. But matching the performance of rare earth magnets is a huge technical challenge. Even with a breakthrough, retooling supply chains takes years. The escape plan is messy, expensive, and uncertain. The race is on, and the stakes are global. While waiting for new mines and miracle magnets, the world is getting creative. First, recycling. Millions of old electronics contain valuable rare earths. Extracting them could create an urban mine. The U.S. Department of Defense is investing in companies to develop e-waste extraction tech. The challenge, it's still expensive and messy. Second, redesign. Automakers are engineering motors to use less, or no, rare earths. Tesla has cut heavy rare earth use by 25% and is working on a next-gen motor with none at all. Toyota and ZF are developing similar solutions. Every gram saved reduces dependency. These quiet innovations add up, making the industry less vulnerable. It's not flashy, but it's effective, and it's happening now. The next 5 years will be tense, a balancing act between risk and resilience. Supply disruptions from China remain a constant threat. The race is on to diversify, innovate, and recycle. Expect more volatility, high prices, stockpiling, and periodic factory shutdowns. Governments are investing, but new mines and plants won't arrive overnight. The most exciting front is innovation. Niron's rare earth-free magnets could be a game-changer by 2027. Automakers are designing vehicles to use fewer rare earths. The industry is fighting a two-front war: new tech and new sources. The era of prioritizing cost above all else is over. The new mantra: resilience. Supply chains are being rewired for security, not just efficiency. The price of security will show up in your next car, but the alternative is silence on the assembly line. Dysprosium might sound obscure, but this story is about power, jobs, and the future. The Ford shutdown wasn't just a headline. It meant lost paychecks and economic pain for real people. Our green transition, EVs, wind turbines, solar panels, depends on rare earths. The tools to save the planet are controlled by a single rival. This is a dangerous paradox. Our sustainable future is built on a fragile dependency. Securing these supply chains is a climate security issue, not just an economic one. For decades, the West traded independence for cheap products. Now that leverage is being used against us. This isn't just about cars. It's about who controls the building blocks of the 21st century. The answer will shape your job, your next car, and the planet's future. And that's not complicated at all.